Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Carlucci. I lead our U.S. sustainability research. Thank you so much for joining this morning in this conference. Currently, we're delighted to have Yiannis Kalafatas, the CFO of MYTILINEOS. And today we're going to discuss his company and its role in the broader energy transition. Before we get started, I just have a disclosure I have to read here. The views expressed or represented by non-Morgan Stanley speakers during this Sustainable Futures Conference do not represent the views of Morgan Stanley or Morgan Stanley Research. For important disclosures, please see the Morgan Stanley Research Disclosure website at www.morganstanley.com/researchdisclosures. If you have any questions, please reach out to your Morgan Stanley sales representative. So with that, I think we'll jump right into the conversation here. And for those on the line, please feel free to submit questions through the online portal. But Yiannis, maybe to start, if you can just sort of give an overview of the company, the different divisions that you operate in.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much, and thanks to Morgan Stanley for that mini interview. MYTILINEOS is a Greek-listed entity in the Athens Stock Exchange. Is an entity that employs today more than 3,500 people with a presence in all 5 continents and 4 distinct business units that one could see operating 2 pillars of activity, one being the metallurgical pillar and the other one being a broader power and energy one. The 4 business units are the one of the aluminium and alumina activity, a power and gas activity, one business unit that has to do with the international renewable and storage development, and of course our sustainability engineering solutions unit. The group generates now a turnover that is close to 4 billion euros. Last year, we exceeded an EBITDA of 350. And since our topic for today is the energy transition, we are proud to say that already a fair part of our activities relate with this energy transition or with the green energy topic.
Great. Maybe if we can elaborate on that last point, if you could talk about the company in the context of the broader energy transition and sort of which activities you expect from the company to contribute more meaningfully over time.
Yeah, exactly. Now, for us in MYTILINEOS, the transition, the green transition, or if you like, the ESG topic, has already become an integral part of our corporate strategy and our corporate DNA. The roadmap and the actions that we have committed in are more business decisions, I would say, rather than a tick in the box of some green narrative. So all the 4 business units that I described earlier and all their sub-activities are expected to have a fair balanced contribution to that transition. Let me give you a couple of examples for that. MYTILINEOS today has a mature pipeline of renewables that account for some 7 gigawatt in total, out of which 2 gigawatt are in Greece, and these are falling below the power and gas business unit, and 5 gigawatt are outside Greece in all the 5 continents, and these fall below the RSD business unit. The traditional metallurgy business unit is already shifting and leaning towards this green transition. So the target there is gradually to be able to produce green and sustainable aluminum products. And this will be implemented via a twofold strategy. First, by increasing the recycled aluminum output in the total output mix. And second, by having a more and more extensive use of renewables in the electrification of the smelter. And finally, the Sustainable Engineering Solutions business unit is also pointing towards the energy transition as the part of its backlog that relates to sustainability and new energy solution projects, as we call them, is gradually growing, and at the moment is reflecting a 30% quota in the total backlog. So all in all, the strategy of MYTILINEOS is such that the growth prospects for all the 4 business units are coming and deriving through this transition story.
And Yiannis, you're one of the few companies in Greece that have set a net zero emissions target. So maybe can you just give an update on sort of where you are in that process and how you plan to achieve that?
Yeah, this is very true, Mark. And allow me to say that I think MYTILINEOS is not only within the few Greek companies, but I think that MYTILINEOS is also part of a still very limited club of same-sized entities globally that has done so. However, as I mentioned before, ESG targets for us is the natural outcome of the business strategy and not vice versa. So we have not changed at all the targets that we have set. But let me remind a bit and refresh our memory of what we have set. As a first step, we aim to achieve a 30% reduction of our 2019 direct and indirect emissions by 2030. And this is not a general bold target. This is a target that has been specialized by sector. So, for example, power and gas has its own target for 50% reduction, while metallurgy has its own target for 75% reduction. And that goes on to cover all the business units and the central functions of the group. And at the second step, we target to go net zero by 2050. Now, this whole plan consists of 11 different key initiatives and more than 50 sub-actions that run across all the business units and the functions of MYTILINEOS. Obvious examples of the key initiatives: the expansion of the RES portfolio at the global scale. As I said earlier, we already count 7 gigawatt of assets at the global scale. The increase of the secondary aluminium output, and of course, the gradual greenification of the aluminium smelter. What is worth mentioning also is that in 2021, we have already reported a decrease of our carbon emissions by 12.4% versus our base year. And I think that this is a very encouraging point that we have come almost halfway to our 2030 target by 2021. I know and I acknowledge that today the agenda that is on the foreseen has a bit changed with all that is happening around us, but we believe that the world is set on the transition, will not forget at all that our overall target has to be a better future and a better environment. So we believe that nobody will change its targets. And of course, MYTILINEOS is not changing its targets.
And Yiannis, I just want to build on sort of that overview of the sort of transition exposure in your business. Can you sort of elaborate on what part of your future earnings will be tied to energy transition activities and how your growth prospects are also related there?
Yeah, absolutely. But before we go there, let's start with where we stand today, right? So MYTILINEOS today has the RSD activity, which is apparently 100% green energy. The recycled aluminum output today accounts for 26% of the output already. In the power and gas business, the green assets contribution is at 30%. And in the CES, the backlog that today contains sustainability or new energy solution projects is a 30% of the total backlog. So this is the current state. And as we move forward, it's true that the lion's share of our CapEx program relates to green activities, such as renewables development, new technologies for energy or carbon saving, and of course, the increase of the recycled metal output. Therefore, in a future state, and as we approach 2030, apparently MYTILINEOS will still have RSD which is 100% green. But again, in the aluminum output, we target to have almost 50% of the output being recycled aluminum. On the aluminum smelter, we target to have more than 65% of the needs being from renewable sources. In our power and gas, the earnings from renewables will be more than 50% in the future. And in the CES backlog, we target to have the part of sustainability and new energy solution projects to account for more than 6% in the future. So these are the targets as we move forward to 2030.
And as it relates to the aluminum business, you've talked about plans to become a global benchmark for green aluminum. Can you just describe what that means and sort of what are the benefits of a transition to that?
Yeah, well, being a global benchmark for green aluminum is a very ambitious target, right? But I think that we are pretty familiar with ambitious targets. Remember when we targeted to become a top quartile aluminum producer at the global scale? That was a super ambitious target back then, but we made it, right? So I think that, again, being a global benchmark for green aluminum is, again, a very ambitious target, but we're going to make it. Now, why and what are the benefits out of that? We think green transition, first of all, is born and derived by the society itself. We see that the needs of the customers are changing. The requirements for green and sustainable products and services are already reality, and this is growing very fast. And in this world, as the demand for green and sustainable products are increasing, the supply might not be up to speed. And that will probably create a lot of opportunities, which means that as we are entering a selected group of low carbon aluminum producers or of high renewable energy sources power and gas facility, then the benefits could be potential increase of market share, maybe higher premia or higher prices, introducing a green premium maybe in the market, and of course retaining at the end of the day a relatively low and less volatile production cost.
And the switching gears into your other business, the 7 gigawatts of renewable backlog that you mentioned earlier in the conversation. Just curious if you could talk around sort of the timeline for that, and it's a lot of capacity. So how you plan on funding that?
Yeah, well, there is no kind of a reasonable timeline around that. It's a very mature portfolio. So we're talking about assets that are either in operation already. For example, we have out of this portfolio 120 megawatt in Australia in operation, 300 megawatt in Greece. We have already almost 800 megawatt that are in construction, and another 1 gigawatt that is expected to take construction very soon. Therefore, it's a matter of targeting a smooth deployment of this portfolio, and the target that we have set is a pace of 500 megawatt plus minus per year for the global part, for the foreign part, and another 200, 300 megawatt for the Greek portfolio. Of course, these numbers can vary from year to year for many small details that have to do with all the processes that you need to follow. But at the end of the day, this is the overall pace that we target for our portfolio. Now, about the funding, and I will start, if I may, with the Greek portfolio. There's a very important new funding tool, which is the RRF, that can, the Recovery and Resilience Fund, sorry, for those that are not familiar with the acronyms, that can cover up to 50% of the total capex and at a very competitive interest rate. And the rest, 50%, will come from PF facilities and, of course, equity component, which is not expected to be more than 25% of the total capex. Of course, MYTILINEOS has a very strong liquidity and a very strong cash flow generation, and this is more than enough to cover this equity component. On top of that, regarding the equity part, we also have the CO2 rebate of the ETS mechanism that provides year in, year out a very fair amount that is more than enough to cover the equity of the green transition, especially regarding the heavy industry renewable assets. Now, for the foreign portfolio, again, the PF facilities are the main tool, and these can cover up to 65 to 70%, depending on the asset, the geography, the characteristics, and the rest, 30 to 35%, is equity. And this equity is, in our case, is mostly financed by the profitability that is created by other assets in the portfolio that we are disposing to third parties, and that helps on the best use of the capital and the recycling of the capital.
And for your renewables and storage development pace, can you talk about, just based on your experience in the sector, how easy it is to maintain a certain level of pipeline replenishment there, but also preserving the division's geographic diversity?
Look, geographic diversity is not a purpose of its own, right? It's good to be diversified geographically, but only if we can find in several geographies the right assets with the right quality and at the right price. So even if in the future we're not so much geographically diversified, that won't be a problem for us. Now, the replenishment of the portfolio is a factor of the quality of the development at this stage. And our ratios at the moment for what we call in the industry mortality rate of the assets is pretty low. And that is quite encouraging for the quality of the assets that we have under development at the moment. So for quite many years in front of us, at least the ones that we can provide some visibility, I'm pretty sure and certain that we will be able to replenish the pipeline of the renewable assets.
And within your sustainable engineering solutions unit, can you talk about how you're involved in the energy transition there and what types of projects you're targeting in that context?
Yeah. The sustainable engineering solutions pipeline at the moment is close to 2.5 billion, and it's constantly being replenished. Now, out of that number, the new energy solution and environmental solution projects, what we call sustainability and new energy solution, that part of the business now accounts for 30% of this pipeline. And indicatively, the kind of projects that we can find in this area is waste to energy projects, new technologies for solid and liquid waste management or rehabilitation of old industrial areas, energy efficiency and energy saving solutions, solutions to reduce carbon footprint of large infrastructure or buildings, and of course, smart solutions for cities and buildings, especially regarding their energy and carbon footprint. So these kind of projects are in the core of the new strategy of the CES. It needs some time for the transition of the backlog from the traditional projects to the new kind of projects. Today, we're at 30%. As I said earlier, the target is for that to exceed 50% and reach a level of 60% of the backlog in the years to come.
And I guess similarly there, from a geographic perspective, are there any areas that perhaps are more attractive than others, maybe from a policy standpoint?
Well, for CES and the fact that this is the target, this is the core theme for the future, I think that first and utmost, Europe is one of the markets, as Europe has already announced very, very ambitious targets for the transition. And of course is also facing a lot of challenges with the energy theme and the dependencies. So I think Europe is one of the main markets for that. I would not exclude other markets, but I think that the European market at the moment seems the most promising market for projects like that.
And then are there sort of other opportunities maybe that we haven't mentioned that you want to touch on as well for investors?
There's certainly a lot of opportunities that one can discuss, especially when we are touching upon this theme of the energy transition. There are a lot of things that are happening. Technology helps a lot to that end, and there are so many solutions that can be combined with the use of technology, with the use of IoT platforms, with the use of 5G networks, and so on and so forth. I don't want to be tiring. But the truth is that until we reach a point where all these things can be concrete in terms of solutions and meaningful, I would like to reserve myself until next time that we will have something more mature to say. The only final part that I would like to mention is the new pilot projects that we have done in the village of Aspraspitia, which is the village of the metallurgy sector, the aluminum smelter, where what we do is a pilot project for the first smart city in Greece, with a lot of solutions that will be live and running in some days from now. We are already there. And I think that we will have an upcoming event where we will be able to demonstrate all the solutions that will be actually part of the future solutions of our portfolios, of our services and solutions portfolios in our overall power business.
Yiannis, maybe if you think about the past couple of years and sort of just the increased focus we've seen on decarbonization, not just from a policy standpoint, but also from what corporates are doing in the private sector. And then we, obviously this year in the geopolitical backdrop, there sort of changed the debate a little bit. Just curious what you're seeing from customers and around urgency to advance some of these low carbon projects.
As I said, the current agenda has a bit, differentiates a bit from the agenda of the overall transition and the footprints. And I think this is understandable and quite natural with all that is happening. But at the end of the day, the world has not forgotten its target. And I believe that we will come back to that after the situation is normalizes, and really hope to see that pretty soon. And the fact is that, Mark, we're changing generation here, and the generation that is coming is nowhere near the one that is living. I mean, the habits, the way that they think about the environment and the world is completely different. So I believe that we have something here that is quite inevitable to happen, because it's the mindset of people that gradually come up and they will take over. So even if it's 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, or 10 years, doesn't matter, because things are changing rapidly, and in order to catch up, you need to do something from today. Otherwise, the situation will surpass you by far in the future. So even if today we don't see something from our clients as urgent can be something next year, and it can't wait. So the urgency is something that comes rapidly and hits you, and you have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, Yiannis, and I guess just building on that, are there any sort of key challenges that you're thinking about as you try to advance your transition strategy? Any maybe in the near term and sort of longer term?
I think that since we're talking about entities, and at the end of the day, profitability and the overall business case is a key feature and a key factor. I think one of the challenges is to make sure that we all understand the new business case around this transition, because there is a business case, obviously, and we have all to learn about it and learn from it and cope to that new thing. But the main challenge is for entities that come from a traditional world and from a traditional environment, and they want to change to something new. Always the challenge is how you see and how you evaluate the new business case within this new frame.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Maybe we'll just wrap up here with one more question. Just curious if there's anything that we did not touch on today that you want to put in front of investors.
I think that we have said a lot of things, a lot of interesting things. And once again, thank you so much for that opportunity, Mark.
Of course, it was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks again to everybody on the line. If there's any other questions for Yiannis, please feel free to reach out to me, and we'll try to get those answered for you.